for the Department of Agriculture. And first I will ask, are there any bill introductions? Chief Engineer, Mr. Lewis, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd ask for a bill related to the multi-year flex account and water bank statutes to get some cleanup that the Attorney General identified for us. The RS number is 0853.
Committee, any objections? Seeing none, the bill is introduced. Next committee I will look at on our notes is approval of minutes. If you want to do that right away, I would take a motion, but otherwise we'll do it close to the end if somebody wants to look at that more details. I've already looked through them, so they're ready for approval. At 10, you make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Moved and second, we approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no, same sign. Minutes are approved. All right, then. First item is the Department of Agriculture, and we have Luke is here from the Advisory Service. Welcome to the committee, and he will take us through the pages of this budget, and then we'll have questions while we're going through it. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Luke Drury, and I am with Legislative Research for a fiscal analyst, and I will be presenting the Kansas Department of Agriculture for you today. And then Secretary Beam is here as well to answer any questions you all may have, and some testimony as well. So starting off on the first page, just big overviews, overall actual expenditures for 22, agency requests for 23 and 24, but I would like to start on page 5. There were 2 adjustments that were made to the approved budget for the Department of Agriculture that requires no legislative changes. That includes a reappropriation from the State General Fund, $3,302. And then also reappropriations totaling $4.4 million from the State Water Plan Fund. The agency submits a revised estimate of $61.9 million, including $11.2 million from the general fund. The estimate is an increase of $1.7 million above the approved budget. The majority of that increase is attributable to a new federal grant for local food purchase program and then some other farm and ranch stress assistance. Additionally, the agency does submit a supplemental for lab expenditures from the general fund as well. The supplemental from the lab totals $150,000 from the general fund. The agency cites rising costs and inflation related to various professional scientific supplies, lab consumables, etc. All other adjustments that were made by the agency total $1.5 million, and these are all from special revenue funds. And again, these are mostly related to other assistance payments, specifically the new federal grant that I mentioned earlier. And then this is to, and then the remaining balance of the changes are other smaller adjustments made by the agency. And I can stand for any questions if you all have any. All righty. Then on to page 7. That's change from actual expenditures for 2023. The all funds increase is partially attributable to the $1.4 million state water plan fund monies that were reappropriated from 2022 into 2023. Other changes from actual expenditures includes the 5% salary increase for state employees. The 2022 legislature also added some positions to the agency for 2023. And then we are seeing some increases in fringe benefit rates across many different agencies. So those are some of the changes from the actuals. Okay. Moving on then onto page 8 is the 2024 analysis. The agency requests $58.3 million, including $12.7 million from the general fund in 24. This is an all funds decrease of $3.6 million from the 2023 revised estimate. While the all funds amount is a decrease below the 23 estimate, the SGF request for 2024 is an increase of $1.5 million. The SGF increase is attributable to agency enhancement requests. And then the SGF enhancement requests total $2.1 million. The table above will show you the agency revised estimate, so what they submitted for 2023, and then all of the changes. As you can see there, most of those are enhancement requests. And then they are numbered on the left-hand side there, and that will correspond to numbers as we go through the rest of this section. So some of the enhancement requests include 2 FTE positions for water appropriation staff, 2 FTE positions for water management, 1 FTE for water structures staff, 1 for agricultural marketing, 1 for water management grants, and then 1 for conservation grants. The agency also includes enhancement requests totaling $865,000 from the water plan fund for certain agricultural programs, and then $150,000 SGF for operational costs related to increases in the agricultural lab program. So then moving on to page 9, we have some.
Thank you. Just a second, on page 8, those FTE positions, are those new then?
Those would be new positions. If you notice on the right-hand side of the table, up here at the top, agency revised estimate for 2023 is 345 FTE, and then you can see the corresponding FTEs in that table as they relate to the enhancement request. As you can see, some of those enhancement requests do include additional FTE requests, but not all of them do.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All righty, so enhancement number 1 for water management. Agency requests $321,713 from the general fund for 24 and 2 additional FTE positions. The agency indicates that 1 position would ensure compact compliance with the Arkansas River, and another position would be dedicated to hydrology and geographic information systems, GIS, enhancing available public information and record sharing capabilities. The request would also include funding to give existing staff salary increases. Item number 2, enhancement for the water management grant. The agency requests $100,000 from the general fund and 1 FTE for 2024. The agency indicates the position would manage incoming federal funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and ensuring the agency can utilize all available funding opportunities.
Hang on. Senator Dahl, the question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. These new positions, were these positions already here and they were frozen last decade, or are they brand new?
Mr. Chair, what I can see in the request is that those FTEs are an increase from the revised estimate. I can't speak to whether or not they were historical positions or not. I can look into that, though.
I think that I'm getting some nods behind you, so they were frozen. And okay, thank you.
Somebody want to answer that question? Department? Welcome to the committee.
Good morning. My name is Kellen Leach, and I serve as the Chief Fiscal Officer for the Kansas Department of Agriculture. And to respond to your question, Senator Dahl, some of those positions are positions that most likely were staffed within the Kansas Department of Agriculture 10+ years ago. But as Luke pointed out, they are not currently in our FTE count of the agency. So in order for us to budget for them and add them back into our FTE count, we do have to ask for an increase in the authorized position count for the agency. In certain cases, most of these, we did carry out that work in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of crosses, I'm kind of dovetail on Senator Dahl's question. How did we get by for 10 years without these positions, and now we need them? What's changed? That's my question.
Mr. Chair.
Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not fund the state water plan for 10 years. So if you don't have any funding for the plan, you don't need any staff to help direct and work with that funding.
So now that we're funding it, you're saying this is where we start hiring people for this then? Okay.
No.
So it wouldn't be that now that we have funds for the state water plan, we need staff to work with that? But I'm seeing so that, it would be good for us to understand this, so thank you.
Actually, it's a combination of two things. I do agree with your point that now that the State Water Plan Fund has been fully funded, it does provide us additional resources for water management and for the subbasin team to work with those. But additionally, with the work that the Division of Water Resources does, it's very complex. And one additional thing that has provided a lot of things, especially this year, is the drought. We have almost 1,000 MIFA applications or different water applications that are outstanding at the moment, meaning that we need that. We also have different water right compliance things with different states that come to the forefront over the years, meaning that we need to come to the table to be active participants in those. And so those ebb and flow over the years, but that we need to come to the forefront with those. So it's a combination of state water plan resources, but also other state resources that need to come together to work together for those. So as I do agree with your state water plan comment, it's also changes in weather and other things that are coming to the forefront that we need to respond to with those changes in conditions.
One thing.
Oh, yes, Senator, I begin.
So we've also added policy in the last 10 years under Brownback. So we have the Flex program, and we're behind. So we've had this drought, and now they're behind doing the paperwork, and they don't have enough people to get it done. So it's a combination, I think, of not doing projects and droughts and things like that.
You might have a question to think about those amounts. Are those, is that an attractive amount? Is that competitive so you can fill those positions? Or what do you think is going to take a while to, you don't have to answer that right away, but think about that. At least, is that, are we in the range so we can get some folks to do the work?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We certainly hope that with these increases in salaries, we can get into the range. We are not in the range right now. We are currently, so last year, legislature added some money for 3 additional dam safety positions. We have had those open since July and have 1 applicant who is a psychologist. So we cannot compete in the engineering market right now. We currently, just recently, lost one of our Garden City field office staff to the city of Garden City, went for comparable work and got about a $20,000 pay raise. So that's really critical for us to try and get these salaries up so we can be competitive. We hope this gets us in the range, but right now we're bleeding staff. That's what our situation is.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Luke?
All right. On to item number 3, water appropriations. This is also an enhancement request. Agency requests $702,000 from the general fund for 2024 and 2 additional FTE positions over their 23 estimate. Agency indicates that the water appropriations program works to process the water right application in a timely fashion, and currently that processing time is close to 1 year. The agency indicates that adding FTE and funding will help to reduce processing time. Item number 4, enhancement for water structures. The agency requests $375,971 from the general fund in 24 and an additional FTE position and increases in salaries and wages for existing staff. Agency indicates that the enhancement request would restore the stream obstruction services. Item number 5, State Water Plan Fund, Water Resources Cost Share. The agency requests $65,758 from the Water Plan Fund to improve public water supplies by addressing water quality or conserving water supplies. Item number 6, the agency requests $100,000 from the Water Plan Fund to construct and restore watershed dams to reduce the downstream damage from flooding events. Agency indicates that this is a cost share program with local watershed districts. Enhancement number 7, State Water Plan Fund, WTAP CREP. Agency requests $100,000 from the from the State Water Plan Fund to expand efforts to retire water rights near public water supplies or in highly overappropriated basins to reduce water use and extend the useful life of the High Plains Aquifer. Enhancement number 8, State Water Plan Fund Irrigation Technology. Agency requests $200,000 for cost share opportunities to allow farmers and ranchers to implement soil moisture probes, bubbler nozzle packages, mobile drip irrigation systems, and telemetry for remote pivot operations and monitoring. Item enhancement number 9, State Water Plan Fund Soil Health. The agency requests $200,000 from the State Water Plan Fund for education and outreach activities such as field days, workshops, and conferences to share information about soil health. Moving then on to page 10. Item number 10, enhancement request from the State Water Plan Fund for stream back stabilization. Agency requests $100,000 from the State Water Plan Fund to design and construct steam bank stabilization structures to reduce sediment and downstream reservoirs. Item number 11, enhancement conservation grant. Agency requests $100,000 from the general fund and 1 FTE position to hire a grant manager for the Division of Conservation. The agency request would encompass salaries and wages along with some associated travel costs. Agency indicates that the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will make more funding available to the states. However, the agency indicates that it has little capacity to devote time and management towards going after those awards. Agency indicates that a grant manager would help to enable that capacity. Item number 12, State Water Plan Fund, Crop and Livestock Research. Agency requests $100,000 from the Water Plan Fund to continue research the agency deems to be necessary to ascertain and advance novel concepts related to water quality, quantity, and sustainability. Item number 13, enhancement for agricultural marketing. Agency requests $355,760 from the general fund and 1 FTE position to extend a grant-funded position and restore funding to support professional and contractual services. Agency indicates this position is currently grant-funded, but that this request would ensure that the position is funded moving forward. The agency also requests funding to restore a 10% reduction applied to the program in FY 2022. Other items included in the list of changes, State Water Plan Fund reappropriations. As you remember, we talked a little bit earlier about the $4.4 million that was rolled from 22 into 23. The agency indicates that those monies will be spent in the current fiscal year and will not roll into 2024, so you will see a reduction from 23 to 24 in that regard. And as mentioned earlier, the agency does include $150,000 state general fund request for laboratory professional scientific supplies in 2024. All other adjustments made by the agency result in a net decrease of $2.1 million, including a decrease of $572,656 from the general fund. And this reduction is primarily attributable to other assistance. The agency is estimating lower expenditures from fee and federal funds for various items to be considered other assistance in the conservation program. The agency is also estimating lower expenditures for contractual services in 2024 as compared to 2023. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $57.4 million, including $12.2 million from the general fund for 2024. Governor's recommendation is all funds decrease of $977,508, including a decrease from the general fund of $505,000 below the agency's 2024 request. The recommendation does include 8 enhancement requests totaling $2 million from all funding sources, including $1.6 million from the general fund for water management, water appropriations, water structures, watershed damage construction, irrigation technology, and crop and livestock research. If you move over then to page number 11, item number 17, the governor's recommendation does include $100,000 for a new executive staff position. That does also say 1 FTE. The agency is not including an FTE request for that. This is just a funding request. $100,000 for executive staff. Number 18, all other enhancement requests. The governor's recommendation deletes 870,758, including 405,000 from the general fund for certain agency enhancement requests. This includes water management grants, agricultural laboratories, conservation grants, items from the state water plan fund totaling 465. And then the recommendation partially adopts the enhancement for agricultural marketing by including 100,760, which is, and one FTE position, which is less than the agency requested. Then we move over to page 12, just for their supplement.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering why the governor feels like we need a new executive staff position. You know, it's like we got chiefs and Indians here, and we're running all the Indians off but hiring a chief. So I just was wondering what the thought process was on the new executive position. Anybody make comment to that?
Mr. Chair, in items that I saw looking at the request, I can't speak to the mind of the governor. That was included in the agency, or in her recommendations, but not included in the agency's request.
Does the position put the executive position in the governor's office or in the water plant office?
Mr. Chairman, the position would be in the administration program for the Department of Agriculture, so not governor's staff. This would be agency staff.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the enhancement watershed dam construction on page 9, you have $100,000 there. Now, I can't say I'm an expert on water dams on the watersheds, but $100,000 will cover how many dams? I wouldn't think it'd cover more than 1 or 2 dams.
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the number of dams that could be. However, the agency does indicate that this is a cost share program with local watershed districts.
If you have your own equipment, maybe, but I can't see that at all. So,
Any other questions or comments? Senator McGinn.
Can somebody help me understand the benefit of the ag marketing program? I read the background and it doesn't really share anything.
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the background of the ag marketing program, but I can certainly look into that.
It looks like it's grant funded right now, and that's going to go away, so we have to put SGF in there to keep it. And I just love those programs because everybody wants them when they're grant program, and I always wonder if they become SGF programs. So I would, if you can't answer that today, I'd like an answer as to why that's beneficial.
Mr. Chair, I'll look into that.
Okay, good enough. Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On enhancements, on page 9, number 8, I'm just, when it says agency request 200,000, cost share, opportunities to allow farmers, you know, different things, a way to save moisture. Do you know what percent we're talking about the farmer pays and gets the rest of it off? Is it 50-50 or anything like that?
Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will look into that.
Somebody from the department want to take a stab at that? I think we're deliberating here. Okay, we'll move on then. Sorry, Luke, go ahead and move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, page number 12 just shows the supplemental request, which is the one request in 2023 for $100,000 for laboratory operational expenditures. And the governor does recommend adoption of that request. Moving on then to page 13. Personally, I like page number 13 because it shows all of the different requests made by the agency on this table, the left side. It will show you what the general fund amount is, along with the all funds amount and any FTEs that are included. And then to the right of that, it shows what the governor is recommending. So for example, for the water management, item number 1 there, you can see the agency requested $321,713, and the governor is recommending $321,713. So items not included in the governor's recommendation include water management grant request, laboratory operational expenditures, water resources cost share, the State Water Plan Fund, WTAP, CREP, soil health, streamback stabilization, conservation grant, and then a modified recommendation in ag marketing with a reduction of $255,000 from the agency's request. And then on page 13, moving on then into 14 and 15, again, shows you or talks about what those enhancement requests are that we just walked through. Additionally, it does say whether or not the governor recommends the enhanced funding for the agency. And then with that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Anybody have any questions for Luke so far? I don't see any. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then I do believe the agency has brought some testimony and does plan to speak as well.
At this time, any other questions for Luke? Does the agency want to make a few comments about the budget and their requests? Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Mike Beam with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. We have a written document here. We have several documents for you, but I thought I'd just hit a real high overview and then, with your permission, have our CFO, Kellen Leaps, go over some of this in more detail. But we appreciate having the chance a couple weeks ago to talk to you about some of the current issues and programs that the agency is working on. Just as a reminder, this is a fairly diverse program, 15 separate programs and 6 divisions. And I often tell people that we really touch the lives of every Kansan every day. When you think about food safety, weights and measures, plant health, animal health, the long list that you'll see in detail and the resources we devote to those in that bigger document. And at the bottom, this may be somewhat redundant, but at the bottom of the page and top of page 2 is 2 kind of high level charts. One is, of course, our funding levels for adjustment FY23, and then the governor's recommendation for 24. And then the second one is the expenditures. So before I turn it, if your permission, turn it over to Kellen, I would like to respond to a couple of questions that came up. Number one, on the ag marketing enhancement. Yes, we did receive the $2.5 million grant for local food purchases program. Essentially, producers will register with our agency that they meet the requirements of the program, and then we work with the food banks to provide that money that they turn around and buy the products from those farmers. So it takes some administration of that program, and we were able to utilize some of the funds from that grant. But we believe, number one, we believe there'll be other grant opportunities in this area or in other areas in ag marketing. And if we have someone there that's in place that, we can look in the out years and pursue that. The other thing it did is it allowed this person to work on like the organic producers grant that we received and another food grant. So that freed up our ag economist who was managing the grants, where we felt like that position could focus more on our reports that we provide for the industry. That was the purpose behind that one.
So what you described, none of that is in this description. I mean, on the ag marketing, right?
Well, it should be. I mean, that's the
As a request, it doesn't say anything about food distribution or helping.
We believe those are the kind of grants that we'll have a chance to get with that person. Yes. And then the new FTE and administration. So I believe we're operating really lean in our administrative staff. It's basically myself and our deputy secretary. I think previous administrations will tell you with they had, multiple more people. We've absorbed those funds to kind of shore up our other areas of administrative services. And I'll just be candid with you. When we were visiting with the governor's office as we were finalizing their budget, they said, it appears to me that you're understaffed and having difficulties keeping up. And we said, you're exactly right. So they're wanting to help us, and we're real excited about the opportunity to bring somebody on to help us at the administrative level. So if I could, I would like Kellen to maybe hit some of the high points as well. And I'll be here for more questions if you like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the committee.
Glad to be back. Well, as I introduced myself earlier, I am Kellen Leach, and I'm honored to serve as the CFO for the Kansas Department of Agriculture. I think Luke and the Secretary did a very nice job of giving the high-level overview of our adjusted fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 budget. So I will just point out a couple of high-level overview pieces of our budget and then stand for questions at the appropriate time. Before you should have received a fairly lengthy document of 30-plus pages. I'm assuming you haven't had the opportunity to read the entire thing by now, but like I said, I will just point out a couple pieces of it. If you will turn with me to page 4, I will point out a couple pieces for the entire agency as a whole. We currently have 345 authorized positions. Speaking to some of the questions we got before about the authorized positions, the governor did include 6 new positions as part of the enhancement requests, which in 24 would bring us to 351 authorized positions. To the left there, I show our fund analysis, which is our income, our expenses, and our carryover. To the point that Luke talked about, we did have about $4.4 million in state water plan carryover at the end of 22. So that's why in the Division of Conservation and the Division of Water Resources, we had some higher requests in carrying over into the adjusted fiscal year 23 because we had those carryover funds that were then rebudgeted into adjusted fiscal year 23. So I just wanted to point that out right there. And then going through, we have the budget. We have 3 years of actuals, pointing out there that those are actuals for 20, 21, and 22, not necessarily our approved budget in any one of those years. Those were the actual expenditures for us for those years. And then our adjusted budget and our recommended budget. At the bottom there, our salary for the agency is about 45% of our total budget. So as an agency, we are very lean. And then about 20% of our budget is for fees, professional services. So if you would turn with me to page 5, the first program that I'm going to highlight, and I'm only going to highlight about 2 or 3 programs that Luke and the Secretary spoke about enhancements about. But on page 5, we have the agricultural laboratory, which we did turn in a supplemental for in 23. In this program, we received in the governor's budget recommendation $150,000 supplemental. The budget for the program has remained fairly stable, but as in the earlier testimony, our expenditures such as utilities, professional supplies, and other maintenance agreements have dramatically increased in that program. So the $150,000 supplemental will allow us to continue to provide analytical laboratory services for those other programs within KDA that also support agribusinesses, farmers, and ranchers in the state of Kansas. One interesting piece that I will note for you, if you turn to page 6 on the back side of that, is that our performance-based budget, all state agencies have been asked to do performance-based budgeting, but we go one step further. we actually break ours out into sub-programs, and we provide our budget by what we call decision packages. And so we provide the budget numbers by those sub-programs. So you can actually break out all of our programs into those sub-programs and the budget pieces on the back of each if you are interested in any of those sub-program pieces for any of our 15 programs. So I'll point out that not only is the KLRD performance-based budget metrics available through KLRD, but we also have these additional pieces that are available for you. The next program that I would ask you to turn to is conservation on page 11. And I know that a couple questions came up here earlier, so I'm going to attempt to answer those. If you look at conservation for the fiscal year 22 actuals in the middle of the page, you see that their total budget for their actuals was about $8.1 million. In fiscal year 23, the adjusted budget is about $15.9 million. That's due to spending those carryover state water plan funds. Now, the questions that were asked on watershed districts, that is a cost share program, and the $100,000 that we received in an enhancement, that is above the baseline funding that we already received for that program. So we did have carryover funds in that program as well as our baseline program. So you are correct that $100,000 wouldn't go towards a lot of watershed dam projects, but that was just additional funding into that program. For irrigation technology, we did receive a $200,000 enhancement in fiscal year 24. Those are cost share programs run at the individual conservation district level, and most of the individual conservation districts have quite a bit of say in the metrics and the different information that they can set on those. But I would also be happy to get you some feedback on what those different levels they set for the funding pieces of those. The last one that I'm going to discuss today, or that I'd ask you to turn to, it's from page 25 to 30. And I'm just going to holistically treat it as a group because it's the Division of Water Resources. And I have a couple of experts with me today from the Division of Water Resources. And as a group, it would be the water appropriations, water management services, and water structures. But in the fiscal year 24 budget, we did receive a grouping of enhancements totaling about $1.4 million in 5 positions. And as we've spoken to this morning, we do have a backlog in applications, both MIFA and other change applications, due to not only drought, but just changing conditions in the industry. And this $1.4 million in enhancement funding for positions and to fund those technical skilled positions would allow us to respond to that. And so on pages 25 to 30, we can certainly see going forward that is not only funding those positions with the enhancement, but water appropriations and water management services also has a little bit of carryover state water plan funding that you can see that they're also carrying forward and carrying out that great work that they do in those programs. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to review these budget figures with you this morning, and I'm absolutely happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Any absolutely questions for committee? Senator San Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there was a question earlier about agricultural marketing. So that's on page 7. Can you help go through that fund analysis? Because I think I certainly have a lot of interest in making sure that we do get some local foods.
Absolutely.
To our food banks.
I actually don't have the entire document up here with me, so give me just a second. So which piece of the ag marketing budget are you specifically wishing to?
I'm looking through the fund analysis and was interested within that. What is the grant that was referred to that you're trying to continue?
Okay, so the fund analysis shows the actual expenditures and income for the last fiscal year. The grant that the secretary spoke about, we actually, it's not going to show up, but it will show up in the fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. However, those figures show up in the administration budget because it is staffed out of the ag marketing program, but the way the CFDA number was set up, the funds flow through the administration budget. So it's staffed out of ag marketing, but the numbers for the grant, the grant payments flow through the administration budget. I know, we have to do things difficult sometimes. I apologize for that. So unfortunately, you won't see the fund analysis for it, but we certainly are wishing to continue to staff that, to continue to apply for grants in the future.
So that's an FY23 grant?
It is a fiscal year 23 grant.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Francisco?
And this may be for you or for the secretary. I'm certainly interested in the enhancement requests for things like soil health, for what were some of the others? Crop and livestock research. How does, or what connections are there, or are there any connections between K-State and their programs and the extension programs? So, you know, we understand that they're doing research into soil health. Does this add to that research? Are these workshops that you're having separate from what extension is providing? I'm just trying to see what connections there are between those programs.
I can certainly get additional details, but I would argue that in the past with some of those funds, we've had partnerships and sponsored different research studies with K-State Research and Extension with some of those state water plan funds. And we also work with some of those K-State Research and Extension personnel in the field for some of that research. So I can certainly get additional information on that on a more detailed level.
Thank you, because I'd be interested in understanding when we saw their budget, if these are some of the dollars that they're using to provide those programs.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just got this morning, so this will be a lot of stuff to read here. The thing that caught my ear was that the applications that are back a year, that enhancement, the governor didn't include that in her stuff. So I guess my question, why didn't she include that? I mean, if that's an issue, I'm just questioning why that was addressed. Do you have any comment to that one?
If you're speaking to the Division of Water Resources for the program that does have the backlog,
Yes.
we did receive an enhancement request in fiscal year 24 for that.
For that, did we? Okay.
We did.
Governor's recommendation.
In the governor's recommendation.
Thank you.
Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Senator Francisco's question, isn't these extensions kind of a part of the K-State Ag program that's kind of an extension of it, kind of a tentacle, for the lack of a better word, of Kansas State Agriculture, the college itself?
I don't, can you rephrase your question?
You're talking about county extensions and things like that? They're part of K-State, aren't they?
Yes, they're housed with.
So the funding and aspect comes kind of maybe from the Department of Ag, but I think comes a lot from K-State itself, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
You have something, Secretary?
Yes, so if I might add, and it's based off also Senator Francisco's question, there's been an appropriation from the state water plan through the Water Authority recommendation for crop and livestock research for some multiple years. And we basically work with the Water Office and Kansas State University on how those funds are used. It's usually a couple projects. I think there's been some special research on cotton. There was some research on hemp. There's some research on sorghum. So Kansas State University usually receives those for research, but those are recommendations that come. The money comes from the Water Authority through water plan funding. The soil health is a fairly new initiative, and that's one that our Division of Conservation envisions working with conservation districts for outreach, field days. That's been real popular to try to encourage. They get some funds from the conservation district if they do field days that touch on issues, particularly soil health. They can get some assistance, and it's been real popular.
Okay, any other questions? We're getting close to the end of our time here, but I'm just thinking on one of these programs, that $200,000 for irrigation research, how many, the scope of how big that is, how many circles can that actually, can $200,000 modify for? And it's great, information that are to gather and to improve technology and to improve yields. And but the scope of it is, how many, would that do a half a dozen maybe? I mean, that's how much money it takes to go forward here. And so, but the learning part is what the real gain is. So it's part of the effect we have. So here comes the secretary. I better watch out.
So the chief engineer helped me too with this, but the application, you're capped out. I think it's at 5,000. So that technology is going to cost you more than that on a per circle basis, but it depends. We can utilize that and maybe get 40 to 50 applicants funded. This last year we had a groundwater management district that actually supplemented that funding for the use of that technology in their district, where they added to it to go a little farther. But it helps. The money, the applications come through each year to use all those funds. We haven't had any lack of interest in it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Committee, you have a question yet, Marcy? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do know that was something that the groundwater districts said that was helpful to them and very useful. So I'm trying to understand, when I look at this budget, how does this relate to the state water plan budget, or do we see a separate budget for the money for the state water plan?
So I don't know if KLRD wants, I can respond to it from an agency perspective. The state water plan funds come through a whole host of agencies. And so we only present on the state water plan funds that flow through our agency. We don't present on the state water plan funds that flow through the other agencies or the water authority recommendations as a whole. I don't know if KLRD would like to respond for the state water plan fund as a whole.
Come on, Luke, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I can answer part of that question, Senator. I do serve as the State Water Plan Coordinator for Legislative Research, so there will be certain publications, information that we'll pull together for all water plan expenditures.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we have seen in the past that sheet that shows what's happening to the state water plan. I think it would be helpful to have that sheet at the same time that we look at each of the budgets, so that we can see if there's other agencies that are doing some of the same things, what's happening to conservation. So just is that something that could be provided to the committee?
Mr. Chair, let me get back with the senator on that. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but I'll get back with the committee.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I looked at the front page of what was presented to us on the budget analysis. The FTEs, the actuals in 2022 was 297, agency for 2024 is 353. That's a pretty big jump in there, so this is kind of a high-level question. You might respond to why that much, or where that's at. And the other part that I would ask is, how many people do you have unfilled positions right now? And if so, that's the first question. How many unfilled positions do we have right now?
We currently have between 30 and 35 unfilled positions.
Okay, how does that affect our budget? That's my second question. What do you do with the money that you have appropriated for those positions?
It does not change our budget submission because we budget for those positions to be filled. Now, any of those savings for those positions would accrue to the funding source in which they were budgeted for.
Okay.
Now, to your other point, where are you seeing the 297?
Luke, you got that information?
We had 297 filled positions at the end of because when I ran it, we had 297 filled positions, but those weren't our authorized positions.
Senator Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along the lines, this would be for staff, along the lines of what Senator Fagg was talking about, I was just sitting here quietly knowing that he would ask the questions for me. However, he missed one thing. I would like for staff, I see in looking through the budget analysis, there are several graphs that go back to 2015 as it relates to expenditures, but I do not find a graph that goes back to 2015 as it relates to FTEs. So I would be curious if we could get a graph showing what the FTEs were in 2015, because we can see from 2022, and I'm in agreement with Senator Fagg, don't want to put words in his mouth, but when you look at just page 1 of the budget analysis, this is a significant growth of government expenditures and personnel, which I'm not a fan of growth of government in expenditures or personnel, but that would be my one request. In addition to my comment, would just be a graph showing the FTEs from 2015. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, we're about to run out of time. Senator Francisco, last question.
Thank you. Just with regard to that graph, are you actually wanting to look at actuals, or are you wanting to look at the number of FTE that the agency would have, or a line for both?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Mr. Chairman, Senator, I would appreciate both, authorized and filled, because I'm with Senator Fagg. Well, I'm sorry, I can't speak for Senator Fagg. I can't read his mind. I don't know what he's thinking half the time. But if we fund positions that are unfilled, that's taxpayer money sitting out there somewhere. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Committee, we got a, next choice is that we went through the budget. We're scheduled to reconvene on Friday morning if you want to reconsider or submit some changes. And we didn't add any changes at this point, but if you, or you can accept the report as it is now, and we can adjust it. When it goes to Ways and Means, we have one more chance to present the budget there. So if you want to come back Friday morning and talk about it some more, you think that's necessary, just say so. Otherwise, does anybody want us to come back reconvene Friday and go over this? Do you? Okay. Okay, Senator Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do you think that tomorrow's committee will be filled up with the fair? I guess I'm wondering if there would be a possibility of, if the committee is efficient with our time, trying to work both budgets potentially tomorrow, the fair and the Department of Agriculture.
We could make a stab at it for sure.
Okay, that's what I would personally like to see. And then, of course, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
So bear in mind that they'll have the first shot at the fair, state fair. And if there's extra time, they'll take up that one. So the one we did today. So fair enough? Okay. Fair enough. All right. Okay, with that, we're going to adjourn. Thank you very much. Thank you, Luke, for